What is going on, everybody at home? We are live all across YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter for the LinkedIn podcast, where we talk about everything related to the Philadelphia Eagles and keeping you linked in with the team. I'm with my co-host. I'm with Lindy in the building. We got a lot of stuff to talk about tonight, guys. The Eagles, for some reason, they love the final score of 38-7 on the 5-year anniversary of the 2017 NFC Championship, the rout of the Minnesota Vikings, aka the Purple Freaks. The Eagles smoke the Blue Freaks, the Giants, or the Midgets, or whatever you want to call them. 38-7. Eagles advance to another NFC championship game, and then we got all sorts of stuff to talk about. But Lindy, how you doing tonight, my man?
I can't be any better than what we are right now after that victory. It was I know we did our predictions last week. It was kind of unexpected. On my part, I only had it at about 2 scores. Didn't think it would be this kind of slaughter fest, but I know I do know plenty of people did have the game a blowout. So shame on me for not thinking as such, but you gotta love the result either way.
Absolutely, guys. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and let's start with the Eagles beating the New York Giants. We're going to go ahead and just recap this game for everyone. Obviously, the game was played on Saturday night. There's a lot of questions going into this game. And the biggest one was about quarterback Jalen Hurts and what is he going to do? His shoulder is hurt. He's not 100%. What's he going to be able to do? And, man, I got to say, he did not put up, like, the crazy numbers like a lot of people wanted, but to me, he looked good. He started the drive, took a deep shot down the field, Avonte Smith, and the Eagles just came out swinging on the opening drive, and they went right down the field on the New York Giants and really put the Giants defense on their heel, really had the Giants feeling nervous. So nervous, in fact, the ensuing drive, Brian DeBall goes for it on a 4th and 8, pretty much on his own side of the 50. And yeah, wasn't the best idea to do that because the Eagles offense was already humming. And then they kept humming and they kept humming and they kept humming and they kept humming. And the Giants, they got 7 points. Saquon Barkley broke off a huge run in the second half. Other than that, the Giants didn't do anything. The Eagles ran the ball and they pretty much did whatever they wanted for this entire game. And you even had Kenneth Gainwell run for 120-something yards. He's the first Eagles 100-yard rusher in quite some time in a playoff game. So kudos to him. I'm going to give him a lot of credit for what he was able to do in the game. Miles Sanders, just short of 100 yards in this game, but Miles Sanders was very effective. He was breaking off some big runs. So great job to Nick Sirianni, Shane Steichen, and Jonathan Gannon putting together great game plan. Jalen Hurts playing some efficient football. The way he was able to lead this offense was something to watch. And the Eagles have to be feeling good about themselves going into the NFC Championship. Lindy, what were your thoughts on the game and what really stood out to you the most? Those were my thoughts and everything. But what do you think?
Like I said in the very beginning, I did not expect this to be a blowout. And again, shame on me for thinking that. But this is the third, it was the third matchup that we had against the New York Football Giants. So you would have to imagine that at this point, your opponent is going to bring their best game possible. And it still didn't happen. It didn't matter. At that 4th and 8, I think Brian Dable knew that he was in a position of inevitability that this team is going to score on us no matter what. So did I think his gamble in the beginning was premature? It was a little bit. It's not. He doesn't exactly have the personnel that the Eagles do to really be able to convert fourth downs consistently the way the Birds have been able to achieve all year. And then you were talking about Kenny Gainwell hitting over 100 yards. Every running back on our roster hit over 5 yards a carry, so that was impressive.
Boston Scott with another touchdown, the Giant Slayer.
The Giant Killer comes in yet again, making Wink Martindale eat his words once more. He had 6 for 32. Miles came in with 17 for 90. Both he and Boston averaged 5.3 a carry. Kenny Gainwell ripping off that fourth quarter touchdown, put him at 9.3 a carry on the day at 12 carries for 112. Overall, this is what happens. This is what happens when your opponent is at your mercy. When you're able to really orchestrate your offense to its full potential, your quarterback doesn't have to do much. He doesn't have to necessarily throw the you-know-what out of the football to try and get some momentum going. Hurts had to throw when he had to throw or when he wanted to. Opening the game with that deep ball to Avonte Smith, as he knew he had him on the deep cross, single coverage, awesome play there, and really set the tone for the rest of the game. And I told all of you guys last week, Dallas Goedert was going to be a factor early, and what happened? Of course, he scores the first touchdown along with a bunch of other key plays to set the Eagles up in the red zone or on that other crossing pattern that Hurts hit him for about 23 yards or so. But I told you guys Dallas Goedert was going to be a factor in this game early. The rest of it, defensively, I remember, Jim, you were talking about you had the over-under in terms of sacks for this game at least over 5 or 5.5. Well, they came close. They did sack Daniel Jones 5 times. He had a QBR of 11. So I think it's pretty darn impressive despite, overlooking the team's incompetence to that point. For an Eagles defense to hold an opposing quarterback to under a QBR of 15 is nothing but impressive and remarkable. And this isn't the first time that the Eagles have done this in the regular season. On the other side, Jalen Hurts comes in, doesn't do much, 16 of 24. Again, he threw the football when he had to, comes in, QBR of an 84 with a passer rating of 112. When you think we're in a position of him being the MVP, he's going to put up not glowing numbers, but they're still MVP numbers to the fact that he did what he needed to do in terms of taking care of the football and knowing when.
The numbers are not what matters. You just know that Jalen Hurts is the MVP because of his ability to affect the game. Yeah. Like Jalen Hurts is what makes this Eagles offense move. The same Eagles offense that completely boat raced this New York Giants team that everyone was talking about for beating the Minnesota Vikings. This is the same team that lost a few weeks ago at home to the New Orleans Saints, a 7-win team with Gardner Minshew starting. We lost to the Saints by double digits because the offense just cannot function on a high level without Jalen Hurts because there's so many things that he does that you have to account for. You have all these weapons, but you have to account for Jalen Hurts' ability to run. And Jalen, he didn't run for, 100 yards or anything, but he had some key plays where he was running and picking up the first down. He ran and he scored that rushing touchdown. So Jalen Hurts' ability to affect the game is what matters. And last week we asked this question to all you guys watching. How concerned are you about Jalen Hurts' injury? And after that game, you have to feel pretty good about himself because he's healthy enough to affect the game on the level that we need him to win football games. And I think the offensive line did an outstanding job as well. Even Lane Johnson fighting through his injury. He was out there completely shutting down Kayvon Thibodeau, and he was opening up huge running lanes as well. So you have to feel good about Jalen Hurts, and you have to feel good about this entire offense coming together, getting some guys healthy, going up into this matchup against the 49ers. Any thoughts on that, Lindy?
No, other than you hit the rest of the points that I was going to get to. I think the biggest one to remember is the fact that we had our entire offensive line out there. Yeah, what was it? Landon Dickerson.
He came out for a few plays, but came back in.
And I hate to say the term glass ankles, but to this point this year, how many times has he gone out with an ankle issue more so than a knee issue? And it's been both ankles at different points in the season. So you have to wonder how that's going to affect him for the rest of his career, because he's arguably playing like a Pro Bowler. And we don't want to be in a situation where, and like going back to 2020 with how many different offensive line combinations we had due to injury, we don't want to get into that position again. But in Stout, I trust. Jeff Stoutland was fantastic. He was one of my unsung heroes of that game for just the way he managed the offensive line as a whole, coordinating the run game, getting everybody involved, giving the Giants multiple looks between Boston Scott, Kenny Gainwell. You have two shorter running backs that can hide so easily behind this tall group of men in the trenches, 6'4", 6'5" plus. And, that's hard. That makes it very difficult on a defensive line to locate the football as to who has it, especially if Hurts doesn't tuck it and run, which he did it just enough in that game. So, it was just, and we could talk about this game the rest of the podcast, but it was an absolute dominance across the board.
It was a great performance on both sides of the ball by the Philadelphia Eagles. So last week we decided who was going to be the standout players from the divisional round. We had a few guys in mind. For me, I think Hassan Reddick was one of my guys, and I feel like he was unbelievable in this game. Hassan gets a lot of credit. A.J. Brown has been probably the most talked about pickup for good reason for what he's done for our offense, but Hassan Reddick has done arguably just as much for our defense as what A.J. has done on the offensive side. And it just seemed like every play, Hassan was having his name called. The defensive line, like we said, got after Daniel Jones, 5 sacks. Everyone was all over the place. So I gotta give a lot of credit to Hassan, but there's one play I want to point out, and it was when Daniel Jones almost got strip sacked by Josh Sweat. So this is what happened. Josh Sweat is on the completely other side of the field from where Daniel Jones is. Daniel Jones is rolling out, and Josh Sweat is literally in a headlock. He's getting held, and he gets out of it, and he has the speed to get all the way to the other side of the field and almost gets a strip sack on Daniel Jones. So I got to give a shout out to this whole defensive line for what they did to affect this game. They look dangerous, and they look like they're playing their best at the best time of the year. So shout out to the D-line.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not like much of the defensive tackles flashed this game, but when they're able to clog the lanes to where the Giants had a really hard time in running the football, aside from that breakaway run that Saquon Barkley had, which is their own mistake because they didn't use that to build momentum whatsoever. Yeah, they got a single touchdown out of it, but at the first sign of maybe something is working, they didn't go back to the run after that. And I think a lot of that had to do with how proficient up front your front four guys have been, especially the defensive tackles. If they're doing their job in being able to clog up that space, that buys the edge rushers time, especially if they're pushing the pocket back and it collapsing on the quarterback. That gives your edge rushers time to really make an impact. Coming off against their assignments, and for whatever reason, I have no idea why, but they didn't seem to want to adjust any kind of protection over to Josh Sweat's side, and well,
big mistake.
It was a massive mistake on their end, and it especially hurts when Giants fans have been complaining about Evan Neal all year. That high draft pick, that rookie from Alabama, the right tackle, has just been a major disappointment. Hassan Reddick was having his way with them. They switched the protection up. Josh Sweat takes advantage. Overall, again, it was a complete game and just didn't give Daniel Jones any room to breathe or gain any kind of momentum. And when you have all three phases of your team at the top of their game, you're going to be very hard to beat. And that's the statement the Eagles made on Saturday.
Absolutely, guys. So we're going to be taking a short break here. And when we get back, we're going to bring you guys the latest news on some injuries. And possibly a return of Avonte Maddox could be in the works. We are going to discuss that right after this. The Linc'd podcast is your place for Eagles news, coverage, and the best content on the Sideline Sports Network. Shout out to all of our team right now that is out there in Indianapolis at the National Scouting Combine doing some work. We have a great team of guys out there and girls. We have Megan Price out there. We have some heavy hitters. Eric Wilson. You guys remember Eric was on the show with us one time. So JB, all those guys out there that are doing the work. National Scouting Combine is a great event for some of these lesser known, some of these guys that don't get invited to the big combine to get the opportunity to showcase what they can do. And shout out to the Sideline Sports team for being all over it and covering that event. Make sure you guys check out the Sideline Sports YouTube channel. You guys can go see all the stuff that they've been doing this week, doing some really awesome stuff out there in Indianapolis. So, guys, Avonte Maddox is going to return to practice this week, or Nick Sirianni is optimistic that he can. They're going to put him on the field. They're going to see if he can run some sprints. They're going to see if he can do, drills and that sort of thing. It is highly unlikely that he is going to play on Sunday. So let's just get that out the way. He is not going to play Sunday, but the Eagles will have an extra week off if they win this game and advance to the Super Bowl. Because we all know you have the Pro Bowl week, which the Pro Bowl was already basically a glorified flag football game, but it is officially a flag football game now.
Mm-hmm.
Being serious. You guys can look it up if you want, but if we advance, we will have that week off. So I think in that scenario, there's a good chance that he could play in the Super Bowl if the Eagles advance to the Super Bowl. And that will be a huge pickup for us to have. But for now, I think what Jonathan Gannon is going to do is he's going to stick with what worked last week, which was, in nickel situations, having C.J. Gardner-Johnson play that slot role, which he was very effective at doing, and Reed Blankenship and Marcus Epps playing the safety positions as well. And I have to give a shout out to Reed Blankenship because he continues to keep raising his stock. This is an undrafted guy. He had to come in against the Green Bay Packers, and we all remember he got the interception against Aaron Rodgers. And he has been pretty consistent for this team. So you have to give the scouting department a lot of credit for finding a guy like Reed Blankenship who's been able to come in and really contribute in a lot of ways. So I've been very impressed with him. I've been impressed with Marcus Epps, and they're making it work for now. But getting Maddox back, if the Eagles do advance, that would be very, very beneficial for this team as they are in pursuit of their second world championship.
Yeah, absolutely. You're always going to want one of your Pro Bowl players to return. And like I'll say, whether I can't remember off the top of my head if he's a Pro Bowler or not, but
he's one of the better slot corners in the league.
Yeah. Either way, that's how he played for the majority of the season, aside from fighting his injury. But again, this boils down to the scenario of if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And I think Jonathan Gannon is going to continue to work with CJ in his respected spot, and then, like you said, rotating Marcus Epps and Reed Blankenship out at the safety positions until maybe San Francisco are the ones to exploit some kind of weakness. But whatever keeps Josiah Scott off the field is perfectly fine with me, and I know you definitely agree with that one. But yeah, no.
Mm-hmm.
All jokes aside, it was great to touch. It was great to touch on the emergence of Reed and how well he's been playing. I love his physicality at the tackling point. Really gives no room for any kind of advancement. He's there. He makes the tackle. Not much, and I think this has been one of the biggest issues for most of the regular season is missed tackles. And you don't really hear Reed's name being called in that negativity a whole lot. I think there's points where TJ Edwards missed a couple, Kaiser White, a couple other guys missed tackles here and there. And granted, they're not going to make every single one, but you're pro football players, and when you have a defensive coordinator that emphasizes that, along with the hits principle, you got to make those tackles. But anyway, yeah, I mean, I think at this point, everybody hopes for the return of Avonte, but again, we're not known to rush our guys back from injury, especially at
I don't think we should.
Especially at a needy position when it comes to the secondary. But right now we're talking a playoff atmosphere, especially the NFC Championship game. So
everything's on the line.
Yeah, so I don't know how that's going to turn out, but I think if we were in a worse position, they may try and rush him back a little more. But with the way we played against maybe an inferior team, the defense was warmed up enough to be able to contain a little more firepower that the 49ers have. When you got George Kittle, Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk. So, much more notable names.
They have a lot of weapons. They have a lot of weapons, but I guess this is a good way for us to transition into the NFC Championship talk. As you're saying about like all their weapons, yes, the 49ers can hurt you in a lot of ways with those guys, and we know with a guy like Deebo Samuel, his skill set is so unique and special because of the ways that you're able to get them the ball. You can line them up in different areas on the field, even in the backfield, which we know the 49ers are a physical football team that likes to run the ball. So Christian McCaffrey got him in the backfield, and I think they're going to run Deebo Samuel a lot because they know that the Eagles' run defense has struggled a little bit. But the story of this NFL postseason has been about Brock Purdy. Mr. Irrelevant, Mr. 7th round pick, last pick of the draft, rookie quarterback. Jimmy Garoppolo and Trey Lance both got injured. So he comes in, he starts his first game against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They win that game 35-7. And, the 49ers have ripped off, 12 wins in a row, and Brock Purdy 7-0 as a starter. But I just can't see it, guys. I can't see this guy coming into our building, which, if you thought it was crazy with the fans last week, just wait. Because this atmosphere in Philadelphia is going to be unlike anything he has seen in his young career. It simply is. And I think the Dallas Cowboys last week, on the defensive side of the ball, played some great football against this 49ers offense. And that pass rush and that defense as a whole was the best defense that Brock Purdy has seen pretty easily. And you could see they were getting a lot of pressure on him, and he was getting rattled. And that's why really didn't have the best performance. The main reason that the 49ers won that game was because Dak Prescott was just horrible. He was absolutely horrible in that game, and even though he was so terrible, the defense still was giving him a chance. The defense were really keeping the Cowboys in that game. So I feel like our defense can get after Purdy just as much as the Cowboys defense was able to do so. Like we said, Hassan Reddick has been phenomenal this year. Josh Sweat has been outstanding. We have 4 guys on our team, double-digit sacks, got 70 sacks on the year. I think this Eagles team is going to be able to force Brock Purdy into some bad decisions. Because I feel like he's going to keep getting hit, he's going to keep getting sacked, and he's just going to get the ball out a little earlier than he wants to. And guys like C.J. Gardner-Johnson, Darius Slay, James Bradbury, who had the pick against his former team, the Giants, last week, these guys are opportunistic, going to create opportunities, extra possessions for the Eagles offense. And we know the Eagles are one of the best teams in getting points off of the turnovers. So I feel like if we play our game, you can't sit here and tell me that you believe that Brock Purdy can go to Philadelphia and make more plays against this Eagles defense than you trust Jalen Hurts to make against the San Francisco 49ers. You do not understand how good their defense is. But I also understand how good our offense is. So it's a chess match. But in the end, what are you counting on? Are you counting on Jalen Hurts to get rattled against the San Francisco 49ers defense more than you're counting on Brock Purdy to get rattled? I think we know the answer to that question. I think the Eagles are going to come in. They're going to carry the momentum from last week. A lot of juice, a lot of energy from the crowd. Playing at home, NFC Championship game. We all know what's on the line here. I think the Eagles are going to handle their business. But I do think it's going to be a close one. I have the Eagles winning 27-20 and going back to the Super Bowl for the second time in 5 years.
I juggled with this one a little bit because I know how lethal of a defense the Niners have. But at the same time, going over it again, against the Cowboys defense, who is also top 10 with us, the 49ers at home only mustered 19 points. And this is behind Brock Purdy, who didn't do much. He didn't do a whole lot, really. Passer rating of an 87. QBR was average at 53. Barely beat out Dak Prescott, who we thought had an absolutely atrocious game. Got sacked, but his offensive line only allowed him to get sacked one time for no loss. But again, self-inflicted wounds when you throw two pathetic interceptions. That's what makes or breaks a football game. Like you said, the Dallas defense kept San Francisco in check for most of the game to allow the offense to have to take some sort of control. But this is where it lies here. I don't think the Eagles to this point in the entire season have faced as good of a linebacking core as San Francisco's, led by Fred Warner, who is an absolute monster at his position. He's an all-pro for a reason. And in that, they only allowed 76 total rush yards against the Dallas Cowboys. Meanwhile, San Francisco ran for about 113. A lot of those yards weren't very meaningful, as they averaged 3.5 a carry. So again, both defenses did what they were supposed to do. Christian McCaffrey wasn't much of an impact this game. Deebo Samuel wasn't much of an impact this game. They ran for a combined 14 carries for 46 yards. If the Dallas defense can do that, then the Eagles defense can certainly have their way with the Niners in that position, especially at Lincoln Financial Field. So that much I'm not necessarily worried about. It's how offensively we are going to scheme and coordinate this game against one of, if not, to me, probably the best defensive coordinator in all of football, in DeMeco Ryans. It's good, like you said, it's going to be an overall chess match between Sirianni and Steichen versus DeMeco Ryans and Shanahan. This is probably going to be the game of the playoffs to me. And I had another point as well. I had another point. I'm about to think of it. Here we go. The Niners secondary isn't the greatest. I think that's where their weakest point is going to be. So if we get into a position where the run game just isn't there, and the Niners defensively have got it locked up for the time being, I think that's where, with our receiving core versus the Dallas receiving core, we can take
CeeDee Lamb still went for 100 yards.
Yeah. He had 10 for $117, but it was meaningless at the end of the day when your quarterback is inconsistent.
Dak's terrible.
So, in turn, for contrast purposes, if the Niners face a better quarterback, then they're going to be in trouble. San Francisco, for the regular season, defensively wasn't the greatest in terms of third down and red zone. They were average at best on third down conversions allowed at 16th for 39%. Red zone percentage, they were 57th percent conversion, which landed them 20th. Granted, a lot of red zone defenses aren't very good because of a short field against you that you're working with. But it also limits what you can do offensively depending on down and distance. And then I get to the quarterback. Brock Purdy, in 9 games, starting 5 of them, has been undefeated for 1.
And his best game was the wild card game against Seattle, and he passed for over 300 and something yards in that game. But keep in mind, like, he threw like a dump pass to – I'm not even trying to take any credit from Brock Purdy, but I'm just being realistic with you. You can't expect this dude to come into this environment against this team. he's going to have to do more than like throw little dump off passes. Brock Purdy is going to have to play great quarterback to beat this team. To beat this team, you have to be great. You can't throwing for 219 yards or something like his stats against the Cowboys. That's not going to be enough to beat this team. You have to match our firepower and our intensity. So I can't see it. No disrespect. I think the 49ers I think these are the two best teams in the NFC. Two most consistent teams, but I just can't see it.
Yeah, I mean, this is a quarterback who averaged 153 yards passing in 9 games of the regular season. He's not going to push the ball downfield unless, of course, you're up against a weaker secondary and you're playing your opponent's weakness. But the problem is the Eagles across the board don't really have much of a weakness. We were the third best offense in the league. We were the 8th best defense in the league, only allowing 20 points per game for the opposing team. San Francisco at home scored 19. So I mean, statistically,
you're not going to beat this team by scoring 19 points.
Yeah. So
I have a lot of confidence. Like, as good as their defense is, I do have confidence that we can score more than 20 points against their defense.
So for me, two of the keys, it's maybe not 2 keys. There's going to be 3 keys to this game that I can think of.
Tell us what they are.
There's 3 keys here. Well, let me mention 4.
4.
Number one is obviously minimizing the impact of Nick Bosa, who had 18 and a half sacks throughout the regular season. You minimize what he does on the field, nobody else is going to beat you on that defensive line. I don't.
How do we minimize that? Do you think Mailata can handle him?
If Mailata was able to handle a combination of Micah Parsons, who is the next best comparable player to Nick Bosa, although they're 2 entirely different animals, then I think he's going to be fine. But then again, Bosa does have more experience. So, but yeah, I think it's just going to depend on how much they rotate Nick between the strong and the weak side. We already know that if he gets rotated to the opposite side, then Lane Johnson will certainly handle his business. I do have faith in Mailata that he's going to get it done. He doesn't get beat very much, and when he does, Hurts does just enough to either get himself out of harm's way or throw the football away. That's one difference between him and who our previous quarterback is that he's not afraid to throw away the football when there isn't
just a better decision maker.
Yes.
Okay, so Nick Bosa is number 1. What's his second key?
Nick Bosa is going to be number 1. Key number 2 is obviously going against a better linebacking core led by Fred Warner. Fred Warner, Dre Greenlaw, Orem Burks, Flanagan Fowles, guys like that. But I don't think we're going to have a bunch of opportunities to work with over the middle, being that Fred Warner is going to be there. He plays like a hybrid to me between a linebacker and a safety because he's quick enough to stay with some of the quicker receivers. And then I think at the same time, between us and the Cowboys, we have Devontae Smith. They don't. So it's all going to depend in terms of matchups where Fred rotates to, and it's going to be up to Jalen Hurts to make the right decisions because
he's made great decisions all year.
Exactly. So as well as Hurts was able to manipulate defenses with his eyes, we're going to have to rely on him to do that again with one of the better defensive coordinators in DeMeco Ryans and how he orchestrates this defense on the field. So the second key is to it's going to be a combination between Hurts' decision making and watching that linebacking core led by Fred Warner.
Number three,
yes, the secondary isn't the strongest for the 49ers, but I think it's also going to help to minimize the impact of Jimmy Ward since he is their best corner to me. So it's going to be trying to think here. It's going to be a means of utilizing your matchups correctly, making sure you rotate receivers to the weakest links in terms of the Niners secondary. So I'm not going to necessarily say whoever Jimmy Ward isn't covering because they're all NFL players at the end of the day. But when you think about maybe Quez Watkins will have some impact this game down the field, I'm hoping, because he's been very quiet. So he may be an X factor for me this game.
AJ and Avonte are going to have a lot of tension on him.
Yeah. So I'm hoping Quez Watkins comes alive at just the right time to show that, hey, I'm still here and I can still burn people. So if we take care of Jimmy Ward in the secondary, then I think overall we should be fine.
Number four.
I'm trying to think of it. Give me a second here. I'm trying to think. I don't remember my fourth one. I don't remember it. Okay. Yeah. Number four. We are arguably going against the best, statistically overall, I think the best run defense in football. Yes, the Chicago Bears were there for quite some time, but they're not in the playoffs. So this is the next best Russian defense, to which the Niners have allowed only 3.4 yards a carry against the run. But how many top-tier offenses really did the 49ers face the majority of the year, except for maybe a couple of teams in their division? And I think the Eagles are going to give them a different look anyway because they have three guys that can beat you. So they had
a really difficult time against Kansas City, 44 points.
Yeah. So you have to account for Miles Sanders, Boston Scott, Kenny Gainwell. I still think overall the Niners will handle their own in terms of the run. So,
but in the end, the 49ers cannot stop the Eagles' offense. They might be able to contain it for a while, which is why I think it's going to be a close game. But the Eagles are going to pull away in the fourth quarter, and they're going to find a way to get it done. So just like we did last week, we're going to pick some impact players on both sides of the ball. Last week, we saw A.J. Brown come out of the game, and he appeared to be frustrated. Nick Sirianni confirmed that he was very happy for the team winning. A lot of people were talking about that and saying, well, is A.J. mad that he's not getting the ball? Or like, a lot of people were talking about that. But that was not the case. I think this is going to be the A.J. Brown game. For a lot of the reasons that you said. This team's holes are in the pass defense. And if you watch the wild card game, DK Metcalf was getting after them. Okay? And I think his former teammate of Ole Miss, he has something to say. I think AJ's hungry. I think he wants to go out and show this is why this team brought me here. It was for times like this. Meek Mill, dreams and nightmares. I used to pray for times like this. A.J. Brown going off over 100 receiving yards for AJ in this game, and he's going to be one of the main reasons why we're able to win, because you can slow us down a little bit, but it won't last. AJ Brown. Defense. I'm going to Josh Sweat. We saw what Josh Sweat did last week. As I said, the guy's unbelievable. He's getting completely held. He's in a headlock. He's on the right side of the field, makes his way all the way to the left, gets a strip sack. He has come so far. Remember him coming from Florida State. He had a leg injury, which caused his draft stock. He just seemed like, he was too small. He didn't have the strength to make it. And he has climbed and climbed and climbed and climbed and got even better every year. He's so explosive. That first step, he's coming off the line. I think the D-line is going to get after Brock Purdy just like the Cowboys D-line got after him. I think Josh Sweat is going to get a couple sacks, and he's really going to leave his mark on this game. So my impact players, A.J. Brown offense, Josh Sweat defense.
Fair enough. That also reminded me of another key, but I think I'll double that into my defensive impact player, although it may be different. This is a tough one for me. I know I was mentioning Quez Watkins. You know what? I'll stick with him as my X Factor player for this game. I'm going to stick with him for that one. We didn't see much from the Eagles in attacking down the field against the Giants, mainly because they didn't have to. They played a very perfect conservative game of football in terms of clock management, which is yet another key to this game. I think is what's going to ultimately decide it is time of possession. If the Eagles managed it the way that they did against the Giants, the Niners aren't going to do it. The Niners aren't going to do anything unless they are efficient for when they do have the football. So offensively, I'm going to look for my guy Quez Watkins as my X factor for this game to really take the top off and open everything else for the rest of the receivers. Defensively, the Eagles all year, arguably, maybe week one against the Detroit Lions before TJ Hawkinson got traded. The Eagles all year have not faced a tight end like George Kittle. And I still think he's going to be a problem. With that said, I'm going to look at our linebacker core and our safeties. If there is an assignment exchange, depending on the type of routes that are schemed up for Kittle to run in this game, I will be looking at TJ Edwards this game defensively on how he locks up George Kittle or not. But then again, Kittle is a Swiss Army knife to the fact that he's not just fantastic as a pass catcher, but he's one of, if not the most elite in terms of blocking tight ends post Rob Gronkowski. So, defensively, I'm going to look at our linebacking core versus theirs and see how we contain George Kittle. If I go off of the linebackers, and my second pick, if I chose him first, would have been Javon Hargrave, to see him disrupt that offensive line, knowing the 49ers do not have all of their starters. They're out. I believe 3 of their offensive linemen that were starters are still out for this game. So I would hope that the D-line led by Hargrave can get something done. But defensively, I'll pick TJ Edwards first.
All right, so you go on with Quez Watkins and TJ Edwards. I'm going with AJ Brown and Josh Sweat as my impact players. That wraps us up for tonight. Another episode of the Linc'd podcast. You guys can catch us here on the Sideline Sports Network every Tuesday night, 6 p.m. Eastern for right now. If there's any changes, we'll be sure to let y'all know about that. NFC Championship. I am hyped for this game. The energy. You step out and walk around in Philly. You can just feel it. I wish we could play this game right now, so Sunday can't really come soon enough. But from all of us here at the Sideline Sports Network, LinkedIn Country, let's ride!